So it's a conundrum here, and I'm really asking anybody out there who wants to have a response. You can have a response. I suppose you could respond in video, just like talk like I am. But or anyway, a dialogue could happen. If I am a quarter Armenian, and my father was quite aware of and attached to his family from Armenia. He was a half, so his father was fully Armenian, Cypriot. They lived there from Cyprus. And I met an uncle in the 80s, in the early 80s. So he was a very old chap by then. And he told me the story, Uncle Khosrov was his name, and he told me the story that he had been, a thing that the Turks used to do with villages is they would tie everybody in the village together and then throw them in the river. So the whole village would drown. And my Uncle Khosrov was at the end of the rope. He was a tiny little child, and he was at the end of the rope, and the rope came loose because he had tiny little wrists. So he floats off, and was rescued by Kurds. That's the only family story that I have. No, so I wanted this. I'm not a Christian. I'm not irreligious. I'm not an atheist, but I'm not a Christian. And I wonder that if I were a Christian, if the Armenian Holocaust would mean more to me or have a more significant place in my life, would be a larger part of my identity than I find it to be. And it has nothing to do with a kind of insensitivity or denial or shame or anything like that. It's just I am surprised to find, and in fact I've covered this already, but I had an interesting discussion with a young boy of Irish descent, not Irish, American, but of Irish descent. And he was very full of vim about his relationship to the oppressed Irish. And he actually at one point stopped me in a slightly contentious conversation and said, you have the opportunity of that identity of being a member of a community that was terribly abused. And I don't think there's anything laudable about the fact that I don't have that identity. I'm just saying that I don't. And I thought that was an interesting point that he was making. And today I was watching something on BETTE Media. It's a very excellent podcast and various things on Substack. And there was a young Muslim woman who was equating Islamophobia with racism. And I have no thoughts on that, except that it is interesting because it's not racism. It's not her race. It's her religion. Now, if you associate Islam with a certain, regional origin, Arabs or people from the Middle East or something like that, then I suppose it does become racism, as anti-Semitism is anti-Semite, and if you're an anti-Semite, you're also anti-Arab. So these terms get very confused. The reason that I'm asking is that I wonder if I wonder whether, and I do know from my own looking at it from the outside, which is an interesting place to look at it from, though with obvious handicaps, looking at it from the outside, it seems that religion is central to so much in humanity and bloodshed and stuff like that. Now, I understand it from when people tell me how much religion enriches their lives. and it gives meaning to their lives, and it also identifies them and places them within a certain community and all that kind of stuff. As this scientist said the other day, that religion was invented to make sure that to hold communities together, communities over the number of 50. If you had more than 50 members of your community, you were likely to fall apart. And there would be all kinds of fighting going on. And he said that religion was invented as a way of unifying these people. And I'm going, that's just fine. That is what that is. But it's very hard for me sitting on the other side, where my personal identity is not attached to that. In other words, my community, quite seriously, it's not a cliche. My community is quite literally everybody. There is no distinction in my imaginative community. It is every person in the world, every person I encounter. There's no hierarchy. Maybe because I don't have this need of identity, and there are many reasons for that. When people complain about identity politics, they have to remember that for at least 2,000 years, there's only been one relevant identity, and it looks like me. So if people indulge in their sort of, I am this and I am that, I'm quite tolerant of it, because they've got 2,000 years of catching up to do. And far be it from me. There was a guy the other day. It was a communist. There's two communists talking about identity politics, and the guy was saying, I get accused of mansplaining, and then proceeded to mansplain for half an hour. On some level, it really is important that we shut up, some of us. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to listen, and I'm certainly not going to say, what you should do is this. A friend of mine last night said, does reparation need to be in money? And I said, it depends on what the receivers of the reparation want. It's not your call. If I give you $60, I'm not, except in certain worlds, I'm not therefore licensed to tell you how to spend it. I give you $60. That's all there is. It's not the fact that they deserve it. It's the fact that you owe it. So anyway, I'm just thinking in terms of how we're dealing with the two massive hotspots, not including the ones in Africa, but the two that we're dealing with, the Middle East and the Ukraine. How they have been couched, both of them, especially by my community in the West, which does what it naturally does. It says one side is bad and the other side is good. And that seems to me to be an affect of religious belief. In other words, my side cannot be the bad side. My people were chosen. I believe this, therefore I am. I go to church, therefore I am. I was forgiven, therefore I am, etc., etc., etc. And I really don't have any judgment about that, but I do know that I can be sitting on a bus with somebody who believes that. I don't believe that. There is nothing that indemnifies me from bad action. I was thinking as she was talking, she was saying that people associate Islam with ISIS and 9/11 and stuff like that. And I go, well, yes, they probably do. And I have to tell you that I associate the Inquisition and Nazism with Christianity and colonialism. I do. And until those organizations, clubs, make a group statement about their culpability in both those cases, there's not much I can really do. That's how it works. It is accept responsibility, please.